I can shout. Please forgive me for not speaking Afrikaans with a surname like Labuschagne. My ancestors were part of the French Huguenots, who, due to religious persecution, fled France and settled in the Cape between 1688 and 1691. In 1913, my great-grandfather trekked from Daar in the Northern Cape to a little place called West Nicholson in southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. And that's where my life started. From humble beginnings as a fourth-generation Zimbabwean in a cattle ranching background. I'm going to start off today by telling you a little bit about my life before prison, the incident, the hardships I endured mixed in with a few life lessons, and then the main life lessons I learned during my time in prison, and how the Lord had his hand on me the whole time and I never knew it. I'll be about 55 minutes. I want you to know two things before we get started. The first is that I'm innocent, and I want to reiterate that. I was ripped from my life and loved ones for years and spent a decade in prison. The second thing I want you to know is that I'm not free because I'm no longer incarcerated. My freedom means a lot more than that. It is a deeper freedom. And it is my road to this freedom that I want to share with you today. Now let me highlight the contrasts of my life before I got sent to prison. I was living the good life. I worked hard, played hard, and was an avid sportsman, playing several rugby tests for Zimbabwe too. Sorry. I lived what you might call a very successful life with numerous thriving businesses. I was so busy being successful though, that after 14 years, my marriage fell apart. And I no longer lived under the same roof as my beloved children. I missed them terribly. But through making the right business decisions, by the year 2000, life couldn't have been better for this farm boy who grew up dirt poor. I was extremely happy. Making plenty of money in my safari business. I was flying my own aircraft, had a fishing resort on the shores of beautiful Lake Kariba in Zimbabwe, flashy cars, houseboats, speedboats, you name it. And to top it off, I was engaged to a beautiful woman. Then in an instant, my world was turned upside down. It all started one weekend in December 2000 when I went on a fishing trip with friends to my fishing resort on Lake Kariba. Late one afternoon, one of my mates and I decided to go tiger fishing on the lake, leaving the other guys bream fishing in the river. And on our way back, we spotted two fish poachers in a steel boat, who immediately upon seeing us, started paddling hastily for the shore in an effort to get away from us. Knowing they were notorious poachers, I drove my boat towards them to scare them off, and the wake of my boat tilted their boat, causing them to jump out into the water, which was about 1.5 meters deep. They were about 3 meters from the shore and soon scrambled to dry land. My friend and I then watched as they ran away into the bush and thought nothing more of it. The following day, the police arrived with one of the poachers and accused us of drowning the other one. To cut a long story short, I was framed by the poacher, the police, and the courts in an ugly, politically influenced conspiracy and sentenced to 15 years in Zimbabwe's prisons, of which 5 were removed as remission. Unbelievably, my co-accused only got a $10 fine and was set free because he was not driving the boat. And that's exactly as it was stated in the judgment. On the 3rd of April 2003, during the height of the land invasion chaos in Zimbabwe, against police evidence, without a body, and on presumptions, I was convicted of that crime. The shock was inexpressible. I was innocent. I was a successful, self-made businessman with a high standing in the community. You can only imagine what was going through my mind when they read out that verdict. But what I didn't know then was from that moment on, my life would never be the same again. For the first 8 years, only one set of clothing was allowed at any one time. A standard white short-sleeve shirt and a pair of drawstring white shorts. Underwear was forbidden. After 6 months, you got a change of clothing. Sometimes. Other times after 9 months, leaving us walking around in tatters. I shared a cell 13 meters long by 3 meters wide with 78 other inmates. Each person had 33 centimeters marked out on the walls in chalk. That was your space. The toilet was a stainless steel bowl sunk into an open 1 meter square cement block in one corner, as you can see in my sketch up there. We were packed like sardines on our sides, with legs all crossing over in the middle. And we all faced the same direction. When you turned over, it was all together. As cushioning against the cold concrete floor, you'd fold 2 of your paper-thin, worn-out, lice-ridden blankets several times to fit your space, then covered yourself with a third one. And your clothes were wrapped around your toothbrush and toothpaste, would that get stolen, and that was your pillow. From sleeping on those freezing hard floors, my hips had bruised black rings for years, and shoulders ached continuously. Those floors are cold and hard, and not even the breath you take is your own. The back of someone's head is there, and you can feel breathing on the back of your neck. You're packed so close together that what someone else exhales, you inhale. Can anything be further removed from freedom than that? And yet, physical freedom is one thing. You can deal with it. We all can. By living in the moment to survive. But freedom of the mind and soul, that is something else. That is true freedom. They had imprisoned my body, but I refused to let them imprison my mind. I slept beside serial killers, hardcore armed robbers, ruthless rapists, and innocent good men. During those lonely long years, I'd watch the pigeons, day after day. After they'd eaten the pieces of pup off the exercise yard floor, they'd fly over those high razor wire topped walls, and I wished a million times that I could somehow just fly away with them and be free again. And I don't believe there's a prisoner that doesn't think that, because it is the only glimpse of freedom you get to see in there. It's just cold walls, bars, and razor wire. No furniture whatsoever. No beds, no tables, no chairs, no cupboards, nothing. Not even a mirror. I didn't see my face for the first 8 years. It's just rows of filthy folded blankets and hundreds of well-used water bottles on bare concrete floors. For the first 8 years, the worst thing to deal with were the lice. Thousands of them that never went away, ever. They would crawl and bite day and night, leaving itchy, weeping blisters. And because they never stopped, they were draining, both physically and mentally. And there's nothing you can do about it. But I tried, we all did. We spent hours killing them, as you can see in my sketch there. We had no basins or taps in the cells, and only one set of clothing was allowed at any one time. So we had to wash our clothes in the cell toilets at night, wearing a blanket. Then hang them on the walls with smuggled book staples to dry by the next morning. 3 or 4 of us would get together and take turns to wash our clothes, because one garment had to be used to block the toilet to allow the toilet bowl to fill up when attempting to flush. No toilets flushed in any prison. The water only ever dribbled in slowly. Then you'd wash the clothes on the cement blocks surrounding the toilet bowl, dipping them in and out as we washed, as you can see in my sketch there. At about 5 a.m., we'd take the slightly damp clothes, place them on the cleanly swept concrete floor, and rub the creases out with a prison-made sponge. Then fold them neatly, place them in a pile, put a hand towel over the pile, and stamp on it hard with bare feet, leaving them perfectly ironed. Another hour hanging on the walls, they'd be ready to wear. Imagine wearing the clothes you're wearing now for 6 months without a change. Then to retain your dignity, having to wash them in a well-used toilet. Even if it was your sparkling clean toilet at home, then having to wear them the very next day. The humiliation was beyond comprehension. That is Chikurubi Maximum Security Prison, and the red circle indicates my hall for 4.5 years in the prime of my life. Chikurubi is in Harare, and I was transferred there after exactly 1 year in Kami Maximum Security Prison outside Bulawayo. In 2005, during the Zimbabwe dollar crash, Harare city ran out of water. For 3 years, while in Chikurubi Maximum Security Prison, each prisoner was allocated only 1 plastic cup of water a day. 1 cup of dirty orange city runoff water from a nearby dam carried by farm prisoners. That was to drink, clean your teeth, wash your face, bath, everything for 3 years. That's us sitting in formation waiting for 1 cup a day. I have learned that the most important things in life cannot be bought. Health, loved ones, and friends. In that order. During my first 6 years in prison, I watched over 2,200 guys die. Primarily from malnutrition. It was during the Zimbabwe dollar crash, when there was no food outside of prison, never mind in there. After being moved to a medium security prison, during the cholera outbreak of 2008 and 2009, in 8 months, out of 1,200 of us prisoners at Harare Central Prison, 432 guys died. More than 1/3 of us in 8 months. One weekend, 22 guys died. And that triggered something inside me about my health. And I want to challenge every one of you here today to do a rain check on your health. Because once your health is gone, everything else in your life will have no meaning whatsoever. Loved ones. Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is called for a time of adversity, is born for a time of adversity. In my case, it was my darling sister. In June 2006, the prisoner death rate was so high from malnutrition and disease that prison headquarters started allowing relatives to deliver food to their loved ones daily. My darling sisters, Bev and Lynn, fed me for 3 months, selling furniture and scraping money from wherever, until Lynn sold her clay pot business and gave up her career just to feed me for 4 more years. That takes a very special person. And I can honestly say that without her, I wouldn't be standing up here today. Unfortunately, very few relatives could financially afford to feed their loved ones daily, and I helped as many guys as I could afford to, but the hunger continued for most. But friends, family, love and support sustained me as much as the warm home-cooked food they brought. And friends, Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. There is a special unwritten code that bonds friends like we all share in this part of the world. The warm, caring, and considerate society we make up from all walks of life can never be equaled anywhere. I shared treasured memories with thousands of good people in Africa. And it was those memories and their endless generosity, consideration, And knowing what a fantastic bunch of people we still have left here, that kept me going all those years in hell. Knowing that one day I'd be traveling around, reminding people, including you here today, never to forget the value of your friends. Because only when you have them all taken away, do you realize how much they mean to you. What I've shared with you so far is about 3% of my story. I was there for 10 years. The rest you'll find in my book. I've got a whole lot here for sale afterwards, 320 Rand. I've got a card machine. The forward was done by Ian Mack, the former Springbok rugby coach. And he grew up with my dad and followed my rugby all the way through. But I want you all to go back 10 years in your life. So think about where you were in the middle of 2015. Now think about how much you've accomplished in the last 10 years. That's what a big chunk I had taken away. But even in the depth of such horrendous experiences, I knew I had ultimate control of how I chose to feel and respond. Behind every severity lies an opportunity. And that experience gave me the opportunity to get to know hidden attributes about myself and time to consider some really important things in life. My life in chains taught me many lessons. And that's what I'd like to share with you now. Romans 8:35 says, can anything ever separate us from Christ's love? Does it mean he no longer loves us if we have trouble or calamity, or are persecuted, or hungry, or destitute, or in danger, or threatened with death? The Lord didn't say there would be no trials and tribulations. He said he'd walk with us through those trials and tribulations. After being moved to a medium security prison whilst delivering food one day, my sister asked me if I'd like an iPod. So I said to her, what's an iPod? She said, it's a thing that plays music. So I said, well, how big is it? And she indicated this small, flat little thing. So I said, well, how many songs does it play? She said, about 1,000. I said, no way. Where do you put all the CDs? That's how much technology had advanced in just 6 years I'd been away. Anyway, the following day, the iPod arrived under the salad. And about a week later, one of those cheap Nokia cell phones was sneaked in too. It was exciting, risky business that you couldn't dream of in a maximum security prison. And everything was going perfectly until an envious prisoner reported me. After an unexpected search, unbelievably through some quick maneuvering with on-site guards, nothing was discovered. But I was sent to solitary confinement anyway for 2 years. That was extremely lonely. But after experiencing that precious little link to the outside world, I had to get my phone back. And I did, which made a huge difference. I had guards charging their batteries. And everything was going smoothly until 18 months had gone by, and one of the friendly guards approached my spile at 5 in the morning and whispered, Russ, they're coming for your phone. And there's no way of getting a phone out of there. But someone had brought me a protein powder about a month before, and had to go through the doctor and security, big story to get it in. And when I received it, I'd never seen anything like it, so I opened it, broke that silver seal, tasted it, and when I put that seal back and closed it, the next time I opened it, that seal had stuck. So I saved it to hide my phone and whatever I needed to hide in there. So that morning I opened it, broke the seal, took half the powder out. I only had my phone that morning. I left my iPod with someone else. Wrapped the phone in plastic, put it in, put the powder back, put the seal. 6 o'clock the guards arrive. What they do is they make you strip naked, then you jump with your legs open like you're hiding something. Then you all walk out stark naked into the courtyard, and they do the search. And after the search, I go back into my cell, and everything is upside down everywhere. But my protein powder, still in good shape. 5 minutes later, I'm summoned to the security office. I walk in there, there are 4 guards standing, the big desk, an empty chair, a guard sitting behind the desk, and an empty chair. I hadn't sat in a chair for 7.5 years. He said to me, take a seat. So I sat down, felt good. He said, do you have a girlfriend called Karen? So I said, nah. I said, I had one before prison called Karen. He said, okay. When did you last talk to her? I said, long ago, before prison. He said, are you sure? I said, yeah. So he hands me a letter addressed to me from Karen. So now I was talking to you on the phone the other night. You sound so positive. After some intense questioning, this thought just came to me, and I said, no. Karen was having lunch in Bulawayo, and she met a lady there, and they started chatting, and soon realized that they both had boyfriends in the same prison. So the lady said, let me call my boyfriend who's a guard in there. He can call Russ, and you guys can have a chat. So I used the guard's phone. Good one. But after I couldn't tell them what the guard's name was, they didn't buy it. An hour later, I'm escorted up to the officer in charge's office. When you go up there, it's big trouble. And they were waiting. All the big brass officers all standing in a half circle. Officer in charge behind his big desk. And my empty chair in the middle. He says, take a seat. So I sat down. He said, if you don't tell me what that God's name is, your life from this prison is going to change. And him and I got on really well. And I said, officer, I don't know his name. And then the question started. How tall was he? How old? What rank? Where did you make the call? How long ago did you make the call? And I answered everything, and they couldn't pin me on anything. And they were getting furious. And then the head of the soccer, very nice officer, he said, do you want to talk to the officer in charge on your own? So I said, yes, please. So they all leave. I closed the door. I said, officer, we've both been through hell. We've watched hundreds of guys die. I've donated endless stuff to the prison service. I said, can't you just let this one go? He said, Russ, I don't care about you. I want that God's name now. He was furious. So I said, I don't know his name. He said, okay. He calls the officers. He says, put him on death row in the dark cell. So they escorted me over to the condemned section. They used to hang guys out in those days. And there were 56 cells. 52 had guys waiting to be hung. And of the 4 cells that were left, one was called the dark cell. And the cells were exactly like my solitary confinement. So they were 3 meters by 1 meter by 3 meters, and no window, just a vent. And the dark cell had a staircase built over the vent. So it was pitch black in there, and the electric light didn't work. We used to lock guys in there to break them. They made me strip naked, gave me 3 worn out lice-ridden blankets, a 5-liter container cut off at the top of the toilet, same as solitary, and a liter of water. They locked me in there for 23 hours and 45 minutes a day. So I was allowed out 5 minutes in the morning to clean my teeth, 5 minutes at 10 o'clock to have a shower, 5 minutes at 3 o'clock to prepare for lockup. It was cold, lonely, and dark, like being buried alive. I couldn't even see my hand. Desperate on day 6, I got on my knees and I prayed. And I'll never forget the feeling of like warm water being poured over me and a total sense of calmness. So I sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. Within 30 minutes, I faintly heard my Afrikaans mate shouting from the soccer ground, hey, Russ, everything's okay, my mate, don't worry, everything's okay. So I jumped up. I said, hey, fool, don't worry, Russ, everything's okay. So I thought, okay. Lay down on the concrete, looking up at the darkness. Within 10 minutes, I unlocked my door. And the sound of the locks goes right through you. Checked me in my clothes. Said, the officer in charge wants to see you. I get dressed, go out into the blinding sun, cross the courtyard, up the stairs to his office. His exact words were, he said, hello, Russ. I said, hello, officer. He said, have you remembered what the girl's name is yet? So I said, no, officer. He said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it in God's hands. You can go back to your cell. And at the exact moment when I was praying, my sister was paying him $200 to get me out of there. And that was a huge turning point in my spiritual walk. And I'm happy to say that Jesus is everything in my life today. I've learned not to let past thoughts hurt me. The past only exists in your head. It can only come to life if you let it. Jesus said in Matthew 6:27, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? I was forced to live in the moment in prison, and it's one of the biggest lessons I still practice today. That's a picture of me in Harare Central Prison, 2010. I found it on the internet. It was 18 months after the cholera outbreak ended. A sad, lonely time in my life. To be able to find positives in all the negatives going on around me brought hope, which is a huge part of getting through prison life. Hope is the anchor of your soul. It's what kept me sane and grounded in there. Hope enabled me to see that there's light despite all the darkness. Let your hopes, not your troubles, shape your future. I'll say that again. Let your hopes, not your troubles, shape your future. And never look for hope outside of yourself. The answers are within you. We made in the image of God. If you'd said to me in year 1, you're going home in year 3, I would have said never. I'm going home now. Like 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks I could live with. Anything beyond that was too painful. If I thought about my fiancée with another oak, or my mates on fishing trips, or trips to Vegas where we went every year, it was too painful. So I'd block those out until that peace returned. And to be able to find happiness in even the smallest things that happen in prison kept me healthy. Those who couldn't died. Life in prison or in Las Vegas is still just life. It's what you make of it, no matter where you are. I had everything I could ever wish for, and in moments, it was all gone. James 1, verse 19 and 20. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to be angry. For man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. Many of us carry around anger and bitterness because of unforgiveness. The humiliation of being labeled a murderer and terrible conditions were extremely hard to deal with. As was the pain of my bitterness, anger, hatred, frustration, and revenge for what they'd done and were doing to me. I hated them bitterly. And initially, would lie there for hours, wishing every terrible thing on each of them in turn, the poacher, the police, the judge, the ministry, and all who were involved in my conviction. Then one day, I was struck by the realization that they'd all forgotten what had been long ago. Here I was, consumed by the unfairness of it all, and they, blissfully unaware of the evil I wished on them every day. In the end, I was only hurting myself. I was carrying all that in my head and beating myself up for nothing. The single biggest lesson I learned in prison was true forgiveness. And for me, it was bigger than anything I could have achieved on my own. True forgiveness was inspired by God Almighty. And so was letting go. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. And I learned to live in the moment from then on. The past was too painful, and the future full of unkept promises. So I just dealt with each day as it was. I learned to have faith, because no amount of worrying was going to change what I was going through. If you have anger or resentment towards anyone in any way, it will eventually destroy you. Because that is what those emotions do. They steal from you. They steal happiness and freedom. And many people ask me how I managed to forgive them for what they did to me. I remember the exact moment, after about a year, walking in that exercise yard, and I was tired of all the anger, hatred, and bitterness that was draining me daily. And I remember looking up, and I just said, Lord, take care of them, and let me get through this road that's been put in front of me. What goes around comes around. They'll get what they deserve. And once I'd accepted that, my life in prison changed. And the amazing thing was, it wasn't a gradual process for me. It was an instant mindset shift. It was like I had the secret that I was keeping from all the oaks for years and years, so scared it was going to get out. Then one day I just told everyone, just out, finished. Forgiveness doesn't change the person that hurt you. Forgiveness changes you. You can look at it in two ways. You can forgive, forget, and move forward, or you can retain, remember, and regret. The choice is yours. And if you say, I'll forgive, but I'll never forget, then you still remember, and I'll never move forward. And I don't mean forget the lessons learned by the incident. Just don't revisit that pain anymore. You can't bounce back from anything unless you forgive those who you believe have done you wrong. And only when you forgive and let go of the past can you be fully free to move forward with your full potential. Why you should be grateful. Matthew 16:26. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? That is what Jesus said. We all want too much in our lives, concentrating on what we haven't got, instead of being grateful for what we have. And for me, giving thanks to God every day goes a long way. For my health, beautiful wife, lovely family, a soft bed, running water, and so on. When there's no food, no water, and people are dying all around you, you become grateful for the fact that you're still breathing. And another day is a blessing. When you lie in a cell with 70 other people, and your breath is not even your own, gratitude suddenly has a different meaning altogether. Accepting that what I went through cannot be changed, and being grateful for what it taught me, has unlocked my vision for my future. The healthiest of all human emotions is gratitude. Remember that and practice it. Having an attitude of gratitude is one of the most impactful habits for a fulfilling and healthy life. I want to take you back to the year 2000, the year the incident took place. The top left-hand picture, on the far left, is a billionaire client of mine from Pittsburgh. We're flying in his private jet from Fort Lauderdale to Tampa, Florida, where we collected General Norman Starscoff, the gentleman on the right of that picture next to me. He was the officer commanding of the United States Armed Forces during the Gulf War, the most powerful man in the world at the time. It was a huge honor. We were flying to Reno, Nevada to attend the Safari Club International Convention together. The top right, I'm standing with two billionaires, Glenn Dubin and Louis Bacon. I spent many wonderful times on safari with those guys. The bottom left, in a V8 Ferrari, my car in Miami for a month. The bottom right, in a private yacht in Fort Lauderdale. My life back then was all about flashy cars, private yachts, and mixing with billionaires. I thought I was invincible, flying high, thinking I was bulletproof. Unbeknown to me, my life was being controlled by ego, power, and money. Satan had sunk his claws deep into my soul, and I didn't even know it. I was as far away from God as I could get. Make sure you're not in that lost world too. Because the only place you'll find peace is with Jesus. Not another flashy car, another houseboat, or another million. Going further back in my life, I was a wild teenager, make no mistake. Drinking, fighting, poaching, anything that pushed the boundaries of the law was fun. It was during the war days, it was crazy. We lived life to the full, never considering the consequences. But had I known during all those years what I know now, life would have been very different. You don't want to know what else I went through in prison. I had to fight for my life on many occasions. And it was by the grace of God that I came out alive. Thousands didn't. With all due respects, be very careful what path you choose to follow in this world today. Don't get mixed up with the wrong people. Start pushing the boundaries of the law. Because you don't want to go where I've been. There's no mercy in prison. None. It's real and it's rough. After Red Cross had taken over feeding and things got back to normal in there in March 2009, we began a soccer league. I was delighted to make the prison squad as the goalkeeper, giving me the privilege to walk out a strict escort to play against the officer side on the field in their compound. And during our jovial march there, singing all the way with fellow players, I asked one of the guards if I may touch my first tree in 6.5 years. When granted permission, I joyously broke formation and did so. And I clearly remember the roughness of the bark, reminding me of my granddad's forearms, and the distinct smell of that jacaranda tree, which I knew so well. You have no idea how beautiful and uplifting it felt just to touch a tree and feel green grass again. My first evening at Connemara Open Prison, which is a farm prison where I was transferred after 8 years, I spent sitting around an open fire on old logs and bleached cattle skulls, chatting with old Ndebele inmates, taking me back to what I loved so dearly as a child. Now I remember getting lost in the interesting stories, the beauty of the sunset, dancing flames, tranquil call of a nightjar, and the bright stars and the moon, which I hadn't seen for 8 lonely long years. I never saw a sunset or a sunrise either for my first 8 years. Now, I appreciate the everyday little things in life, like a soft bed, a hot bath, the feeling of warm water being poured over your head from a shower, tasty meal, spontaneous cuddle from a loved one. Because those are the things you miss most when you have it all taken away. There are things we know that rejuvenate us. And for me, it has always been nature. I am, and will forever be, a farm boy from Zimbabwe at heart. Nature's in my blood. Touching a tree, smelling the earth, the feeling of soil in my hands. These things bring me restoration. And for you, it might be hang out with friends, dancing, reading a good book, or swimming in the ocean. Whatever is good for you, do more of it. Despite the hell I'd gone through, physically and mentally, the worst part was knowing that my beloved children were growing up without me. I told you in the beginning that not living under the same roof as them when my wife and I separated was the hardest thing. Imagine the heartbreak I felt when I went to prison. We have always been extremely close. It is a bond I will cherish and protect to my dying day. My proud son, Dusty, only 18 at the time, was always full of ambition. And we'd joyously discuss and dream of making millions and plan endless projects and adventures. He was following in my footsteps and loving every minute of it, ready to take on the world with his dad, and then I was ripped away. My 16-year-old daughter, Sandy, and I had, and still have, an extraordinarily beautiful bond. Since a baby, she's always been my shadow. And especially as she is to me, I am to her. But at 16, I was her anchor. I was everything in her eyes. She confided in me without boundaries and clung to everything I said and did. I loved them beyond expression. They loved me. And the times they needed me most, I wasn't there. They went through first loves, crushes, dances, 21st birthdays, and entered the wide world, and I wasn't there to see it. It is an annoying feeling knowing that I'm their father, should have been there, but I couldn't be. And I don't want anyone here ever to have to feel that way. Make enough time for your loved ones. I wish I could express the happy, bubbly, exciting, beautiful feeling I felt as I walked out those prison gates to freedom after 10 years of hell. People don't appreciate freedom. And I realized that even when you're not in prison, there are ways in which we imprison ourselves. So our business partnerships, badly selected careers, being obsessed with money and ambition in the corporate world, even unhappy marriages. And it's only when you have your freedom completely taken away do you realize in many ways that you are actually in prison too. And when I look back on it all, it makes me wish I could somehow get through to people how precious and priceless freedom is. If you look at your life as it is, how free are you within your circumstances? Freedom is not just not being in prison. Freedom is the ability to make a choice and act on it. Freedom is letting go of what you can't control. Freedom is forgiveness. Freedom is being free from negativity. Freedom brings health. If you can be free in all areas of your life, then you'll reach your full potential. When I left prison, I went back into the safari business, working for guys that used to work for me. It was very humbling and humiliating. I'd gone from leading the pack to starting again. And during that time, I'd lost everything while I was away. So all the companies went broke. They sold all the vehicles, the boats, the camps, machinery, everything. I left a huge debt. And I drifted away from God as well. I just felt that how can there be a God if I'm left in these circumstances? And then I was on safari with a group of guys from Clover. And the one evening, the CEO and I were left alone. And he wanted to know everything about my story. So after I'd finished telling him everything, he... thank you, bud. Beautiful. He said to me, I've got a new life for you, my friend. This is your calling, and I want to help you. People need to hear the story. So I said, no, Jan, I think you've had too much red wine. I said, no. Anyway, cut a long story short, within 6 months, he flew me to Joburg, got a PowerPoint, put it together, and I started talking all around. PE, Hoedspruit, Nelspruit, yeah, in Pretoria, Joburg, Cape Town, everywhere. And then a corporate scouting team scouted me, and I started talking to corporates all around the country. And during that time, I met my wife, Sandra. And she was very close to the Lord and close to the Macaulay family. She ran all the women's conferences for Rhema Church. And I started trying to get to know the Lord more after my experiences. And I've had 2 encounters with the Lord, and I'll share the other one with you. The one was on death row. And then in 2018, we got the opportunity. Pastor Ray offered us his cottage, and we stayed with Pastor Ray Macaulay in his cottage for 6 months. And I got to spend endless hours with him and listen to endless speeches and many other generals in the spirit, like Rick Godwin, Tommy Bonnet, Creflo Dollar, Art Boshoff, Bert Pretorius, and they were fantastic speakers, but it was me. I was like blocked. I couldn't receive any of it. And I gave my life to the Lord with Pastor Ray, and I didn't like open my eyes and everything was different, so I battled with that. And then we were offered a free trip to Israel with a touring group, with a Christian touring group. And I'd always wanted to go to Israel and learn more about Jesus and find out more, because I still had that inside me that wanted to find out what happened on death row. And that's the city of Capernaum where Jesus grew up. And when you go in there, there's all the foundations are there and everything, and you walk in there knowing that he'd walked there, and the feeling was amazing. And then this thing is giving me challenges today. That's the the road where Jesus carried the cross. And you can't walk on the road, there are bars there, but you look over and you just imagine him walking on the road, you know. And I thought about standing there. I remember thinking about that movie, Passion of Christ, and just imagined him walking down that road. It was very moving for me. Please help. And that's the garden tomb, where on the left, and then those olive trees, 2,000-year olive trees, and you stand there and you just wish you could talk to them, you know. It was amazing. And that's the tomb where they lay Jesus on the left, and you can't, there's bars there. I just put the phone through and took the photo, but yeah, when you walk in there, your hair stands up. You can feel it. And on the right is my wife coming out of the entrance where they rolled away the stone, and that was amazing. I got baptized in the River Jordan, where Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. And again, I didn't come up and like everything had changed. So I didn't understand that. And then the Dead Sea was something else. I mean, you can't go down. It's like a cork. And it's 390 meters below sea level. So that's hard to get your head around. And just hoping the walls don't break. And it's very acidic, so you don't get it anywhere near your eyes. That's the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus walked on water, and that's my wife in her element. And then there was Feast of Tabernacles, and there's one down by the Dead Sea and then one in Jerusalem. And the one in Jerusalem, Angus Buchan was preaching. And he's always been my hero, and I'd always wanted to watch him live, meet him and watch him live. And that year his message was beginnings, going back to the Bible. And at the end of it, the 4,500 of us had to crowd the stage and vow, saying after him that we'd read our Bibles cover to cover. So I said, okay, I'm the kind of guy, if I make a vow, I'm going to do it. So, and I tried to read the Bible before, and I think it was the King James. It didn't make any sense to me. So I got home, I said to my wife, right, I want a Bible I can understand, I want to read this. And I started devouring this Bible, and there was all this war and adventure, and I loved it. And I think after about 2 years, I'd read the Bible twice. I mean, and slowly, the walls started coming down around me, and this peace that I'd never known before. And we went to church a few times, but I didn't hear. I wanted to experience the stuff I was reading about. I wanted to experience miracles and casting out demons and prophesying and stuff like Jesus did. And I didn't want all the motivational speaking that I was hearing wherever the churches I went to. And then someone sent me a clip of a prophet from Centurion. And I said, no, this like, he was casting out demons, and he was prophesying, he was going like crazy, and I said, no, this is what I want. And at that time, I was talking at a men's conference in George, and I was speaking to a lot of men's conferences. But something happened on that trip, and I came back from George, and I was on fire for God. I mean, I was up at 5 a.m, reading my Bible, praying in tongues. I mean, I was telling everyone about Jesus. And our whole lives changed, and we never missed any. I mean, we followed Prophet, just never missed any of his teachings for about a year and a half. But life was still tough, and we still battled. And many times I just said to my wife, I can't do this anymore. I'm going back hunting. I'm over this story. And she said, no. and every time I was about to give up, there'd be a financial breakthrough. And then the prophet said, unless you plugged into a church, serving and sowing and tithing, you'll never receive a full blessing. So I said, okay. And we were living in Hout Bay. We're still there now. And the prophet had a branch in Cape Town. So we plugged in. And once my wife and I started serving, tithing, sowing, everything in our lives changed. I mean, the bookings came flying in, and it was unbelievable. And one of the tours I went on was with Dr. Caroline Leaf, and we were talking at Hillcrest. And after the sermon, this young girl, I was selling books, came up and said, do you want to meet Uncle Angus? So I said, I'd love to meet Uncle Angus. She said, no, I'm on his media team. Anyway, got a long story. I forgot to click there. It's the Feast of Tabernacles. It was amazing. 4,500 people there. And that's in George. And then I got an hour with Uncle Angus at Shalom Farm. And it was amazing. Yeah, we were both born in Bulawayo, both farmers, both been through tragedy. And we just clicked. I became one of his spiritual sons. And I keep in touch with him all the time. And my spiritual life changed completely from that moment. And I just want to say that how it changed me from a rebel, from someone so far away from God. I mean, we never grew up knowing the Lord. Never went to church, never prayed. Only once. I'm going to share one story, my first encounter with the Lord with you just now. But I just want to encourage people that before I come here, I pray. I pray all day. The Lord wants to hear from you all day long, not just at night before you go to sleep. He wants to be with you. He wants to share your life with you all day, more than you share with your wife. And you'll be amazed at how He'll answer your prayers. I mean, even if I don't have a parking, I pray, Lord Jesus, find me a parking. And over again, there's the parking. If I'm out tuna fishing and it gets too rough and I'm just saying, Lord, I'm getting sick. Sure enough, it would calm down. We were on a hunting trip about 2 years ago, and hunting for kudu with our bunch of non-believers. And we were hunting hard, and it was like after 2 days. And then under my breath, I just said, Jesus, please find us a kudu bull. Within 2 minutes, there was a kudu bull. Perfect shot down. I just jumped up. Thank you, Jesus. And everyone looked at me like, but I'm telling you, He'll answer your prayers. Try it. You'll see. I just want to share this other encounter I had. So my uncle and I left the ranch house at 6 a.m. one morning to go and dip cattle 20 k's away on a ranch deserted from the war like most of the ranches were back then. It was back in 79, and I was just 18 years old. And 1 k from the dip crawl, a troop of baboons ran across the road. There were thousands of them back then, and they were considered vermin. So I jumped out the vehicle with my rifle, no shirt, no hat, no shoes, just like that, and took off after them, shouting to my uncle that I'd seen him at the dip crawl. Within 2 hours, I'm completely lost. I mean, there was just mountains in every direction with this thick vegetation in between. And like that. And by 5:30 that evening, I was exhausted. I hadn't stopped the whole day. I hadn't eaten anything, so I was starving. Thirsty as anything, I managed to find a dried up puddle with a dead giraffe, and I tried to drink that. It was disgusting. And sunburnt like crazy. It was November. In absolute desperation, I once again climbed up one of the many mountains looking for Mount Taula, which I knew and they could work out where I was. And there were just mountains and mountains. And I remember this desperate feeling of like fear and hopelessness. I mean, I was just a teenager, middle of the war. There wasn't a settlement or anyone living within 20k radius, and it was getting dark. And there were lions and hyena in the area. Now, the last thing this hardcore wild rugby player would ever have considered back then was to pray. I mean, we never grew up praying, so nothing like that. But for the first time in my life, I got on my knees and I prayed. And I'll never forget the feeling of like warm water being poured over me. And I had no idea what it was. I mean, I had never experienced anything like that. But when it happened on death row, I knew exactly what it was. And I remember standing up and very like consciously turning around like being guided. And I walked down that mountain. Something said, just keep going the way you came up. And where the solid granite went into the soil was long grass. And I just carried on walking like a zombie. Someone just said, keep walking. And 10 meters further were 2 car tire tracks. My uncle had shot a kudu bull there during the rains the year before. Now I want to tell you, it's 25,000 acres, 1979, cattle ranching country, completely undeveloped. It's like 1,000-acre paddocks, and they were all broken from the war. There wasn't a road or a fence line anywhere near there. It was like the chances of that were 1 in a trillion, and it still didn't get through to me that the Lord was trying to reach me. And I followed those, and then when they faded, saw where they cut the trees to get the vehicles in until we finally got to the main road, to the only road where they were all spread out looking for me as it was getting dark. You know, I never told anyone what happened on that mountain that day. I thought they'd laugh at me and think I was crazy or weak. That's how it was in those days. And the lesson for me then and now to all of you is, even if you haven't given your life to Jesus, He'll answer your prayers. He answered me as a rebel. So reach out to Him. He's there. He's waiting for you. When you go through what I endured, they break you. They crush you, physically and mentally. And to lift yourself up again, and it's your confidence, your spirit, your soul, everything. And to lift yourself up again, no matter how confident you were when you went in, is tough. I had huge wounds that I thought would never heal. And a massive void in my life that I thought would never be filled. But the moment I met Sandra, 9 years ago, I knew there was something very special about this lady. Within 3 years of meeting her, I was healed and content and whole once again. And I could never have imagined the peace and happiness that I now experience every day. And I want to thank you, my love. Thank you, Jesus. The company you keep influences your thinking influences your actions influence your character, and your character determines your destiny. In conclusion, I was fortunate. I'd made it big, was very successful. And possibly during that time, I became a bit arrogant. But that experience has made me realize that I'm just a normal human being. That you can't value your life based on your title, your success, or your material possessions. If you had everything taken away from you right now, who would be left? What would people see looking at you as a person? We need to look at our core values more deeply and see how we can change lives and maybe make a difference in this world. There were times in there when I just felt this was the end. I didn't have the mental strength left to overcome more of those never-ending challenges. But from the bowels of despair comes this realization that just as my mind had helped drag me through those depths that far, so could it pull me out of them. Each and every one of us, when you dig deep enough, can find this inner strength to get through life's toughest times and deepest holes, out of our cages, out of the dark. Every one of you here today is faced with challenges, day in and day out. Those that you look for and those that seek up on you from beyond. But who you are and the depth of your determination is what's going to elevate you to become someone that people will look up to and forever remember. Thinking back on the events of my life, it was so difficult making sense of so much of it, but I see it so clearly now, how I was being prepared for greater things. Before prison, I was a big fish in little Bulawayo, going nowhere, like a hamster on a wheel going round and round. And it was all about me, my empire, money, more and more. And now, I'm a little fish in a whole wide world, making a huge difference, and it's not about me. It's about helping others and making a difference in other people's lives. And the satisfaction I get from helping others far outweighs the millions I was making before. I can now see how the Lord supernaturally drew me away from the outdoor safari life that I loved so dearly to find my purpose. He has taken me from humble beginnings to great success, mixing with the world's elite, flying in private jets across the world, etc. Then being put through that nightmare and losing everything I'd worked my whole life for. But He has prepared me for this calling. And believe it or not, I thank God for my 10 years in prison. I do. Because I'm a better person now than I would ever have been had I not gone to prison. I'm stronger, I know God better, I understand people more, and I believe it's made me able to reach out to you to tell you that you can recover from anything life throws at you. Do you think that you can ever fully recover from a terrible setback in life? Or you're looking at somebody that did. You're looking at living proof that you can recover from whatever life throws at you. No matter what hardships you're going through in your life right now, just remember, you've been prepared for where you're going. The Lord has a plan for each and every one of us. I want you all just to think about something. If you want to get through something that's really tough in your life, like I went through, there's only one way that you will do it. And that's to put your faith in Jesus and walk with Him every day. And it would mean more to me than anything if some of you that haven't given your life to the Lord do it today. There are only two places you go when you leave this place: heaven and hell. And the only way to heaven is through Jesus. So if you want to give your life to the Lord, we can do that after this. I can read the sinner's prayer to you, and you'll be saved. Get to know Him. He'll change your life like He's changed mine. From a rebel that never knew anything, and in fact got annoyed at the name Jesus. And now He's everything in my life. And thank you very much.